Hey fam, listen, I just wanted to share with you a quick word that I feel like God's really dropped in my heart. I could not get away from this. This is not going to be rehearsed or professional or polished or anything like that. I just felt like the Lord was downloading some stuff to me about unlocking the uncontainable, right? So we're in this series called Floodgates, and we're talking about things that can clog the flow of God's blessings and what He wants to do in our lives. And we're just getting started, and we've got a couple more weeks of that to go. But here's the thing: the tagline is unlocking the uncontainable, right? And so when you really think about the uncontainable, what does that mean? Well, here's what it does: it breaks things. If you thought about that, uncontainable breaks things. So we know the story in the Bible where the fishermen trusted Jesus, and in obedience they put down their nets, and it says that they caught such a great catch of fish that their nets began to break, the boats began to sink, right? We know in Acts chapter 6, when the church was growing so fast, there was such new growth and such momentum that people were being left out. Their systems were breaking. This is what happens. It's normal. This is what happens when the uncontainable comes into our place. We try sometimes to see if we can manage it or whatever, but here's the thing: if God really can do, and He will, Ephesians 3:20, do more than we could ask or imagine, then when He does more than we can ask or imagine, it's also going to be more than we can control and manage, right? It's going to reveal the areas where there are gaps that need to be filled and some things need to be shored up and strengthened. And that's not because we're doing things wrong. It's because He is putting us in a place to stretch us so that we can grow into those areas. So over the next couple of weeks, as we bring this Floodgate series to a close, I'm just letting you know there's going to be opportunity for you to step up into those areas where you see things being stretched. Man, God is doing something so beautiful and so new in our church. And the uncontainable is not always about numbers. In our American mindset, we want to say, oh, well, it's revival because now we have more people than we can fit in a room. No, sometimes the uncontainable is spiritual. Sometimes it's relational, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it is numerical, but there's all kinds of ways that God does more in us than we can actually handle or contain because He doesn't want us to. So here's what that means. One, I feel like you just need to know that we recognize that there are areas in our church post COVID, as we come out of this pandemic, where there are gaps and holes, and we're well aware of it, right? But we also see the beauty of what God's doing, and He's raising up people to step into those places and fulfill the call that He's put on their lives. This isn't about people stepping in and just like grinding and grunting and getting it through and done. This is about people stepping into literally the places that God has called them and gifted them to serve. And so when we give you those opportunities, man, don't sit and wait. Don't be the people that sit back and just like point out all the areas where things might be cracking, breaking, being stretched. Be the people who see those areas and thank God that the uncontainable is stretching us and that we have an opportunity to step in. And when we do step in, listen, I just want to remind you what happens when we are willing to be broken, right? They 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 fed more than 5,000 people with just a little bit of bread and a little bit of fish. And at the end of that, remember this in John, right? The key word is leftovers, and the word for leftover is remnant. And Jesus said to the disciples, gather the remnant, gather the leftovers, all those broken pieces. And when they got all the broken pieces together, there was more in their brokenness than there ever was when those were together. And that's what God's doing, right? Don't be afraid of this moment. Don't be afraid of what He's doing in our church right now, because this is a mark of revival. Revival's not everything's great and there's all kinds of money and people keep coming and they think that we're all that in a bag of chips. The mark of revival is brokenness, confession, and worship. Like, this is where we are right now. And it's so beautiful what God's doing through you and through me. And we don't want to miss it. Don't take it for granted, and don't assume that it's on other people to continue to manage this, because we can't. It's beyond us. It's uncontainable. It's the very thing we're praying for. And as God does it, don't be afraid when it looks like things are maybe breaking. It's just God with an opportunity for us to see people raised up. I'll close with this in Acts chapter 6. When the uncontainable growth began to break the systems of the church, what did they do? Well, the leaders simply said, hey, we've got to continue to give ourselves to prayer and to the word, right? Translation, how I feel right now, I got to find out what God's saying so I can bring it to the church. But they said, go and find people who are full of the Spirit. That's key, so that they can step into those places and make sure that the needs are still being met. And so we're praying that God raises up people full of the Holy Spirit. You're probably one of them who will step into those places and meet the needs. Don't be afraid when the uncontainable becomes uncomfortable, because that's the whole point. Man, let's step in and lean into what God's saying. And then let's simply go be obedient, because simple obedience produces supernatural outcomes.